Hi, I'm Cher, the Shadow Walker, and I'm taking a look at extraterrestrial activity, animal mutilations, and spirit activity in the Prairie provinces of Canada and the Midwest of the United States. So, in Manitoba, over the past 48 hours, in extraterrestrial and animal mutilations in the Interlake region of Manitoba, at 11:45 p.m. on March 31st, 7 independent witnesses, including a long-haul trucker and the local residents, a large silent chevron-shaped craft with faint blue luminescence on its underside. The object was observed hovering over the shore line before emitting a low-frequency pulse that caused the street lights in a 2-block radius to flicker and die. And they reported it to the Manitoba UFO Research. And in animal mutilation in the rural grazing lands south of Brandon, Manitoba, near Whitewater, April 1st at 7:15 p.m., a livestock owner and a veterinarian technician, a mature Angus cow found with perfect 6-inch circular incisions of the hide and left flank, along with surgical removal of the tongue and eye. The ground beneath the carcass was completely dry. There was no external or internal blood spatter despite the removal of major vascular organs. And the cauterized edges seemed to be blackened and smooth, indicating thermal sealing process rather than natural predator attack. And no vehicle tracks, no human animal tracks were found within a 50-foot radius. They reported it to the Manitoba RCMP Brandon Detachment and the Manitoba Chief Veterinarian Office. And in spirits, in the Manitoba region, on March 31st at 6 p.m. through to April 1st at 5 p.m. in Worsley, a historic residential home in the neighborhood of Worsley, on April 1st at 3 a.m., 2 residents, one resident heard their partner whispering their name from the hallway. When they investigated, they found their partner fast asleep in a different room. A heavy dining room chair was found moved from the table and placed directly in front of the basement door. That sounds like a warning. The sound of fingernails scratching was heard coming from the interior of the bedroom walls for approximately 15 minutes, and it was reported to the Winnipeg Paranormal Group. And a private residence near Henderson Highway in Winnipeg on March 31st at 10:30 p.m., 3 occupants during a social gathering, poltergeist activity. A glass pitcher on the counter shattered spontaneously from the inside out. A visual-like static humanoid figure was seen standing in the periphery of the living room. It appeared to glitch and flicker before vanishing. All cell phones in the room experienced simultaneous signal blackouts during a 30-second event. Shared with the local haunted history researchers. And in the Interlake Shadow area, rural residents in the St. Laurent area of Manitoba at 1:15 a.m. on April 1st, and it's a lone occupant, a shadow walker entity approximately 6.5 feet tall, was observed at the front of the bed. The witness described it as foot of the bed, sorry. The witness described it as void in shape of a man that projected an aura of intense cold. The witness woke up to find sooty oil handprints on the white bed sheets that vanished by sunrise. Marked the sheets, did they? A strong, localized smell of decaying vegetation and sulfur filled the room. And they reported it to the local elders. In Saskatchewan, over the last 48 hours, for extraterrestrial and animal mutilations on March 30th and to April 1st, aerial phenomena. Highway 40 near Hafford, Saskatchewan. The occurrence was at 10:45 p.m. on March 31st, and it was two witnesses in a single vehicle. A silver dome disc-shaped object was observed hovering at approximately 30 feet above the highway. The craft emitted a faint static hum, which caused the vehicle's headlights to flicker before it moved silently across the road, vanished into the tree line. They reported it to the local RCMP and the regional UFOs. In animal mutilations, in the rural pastures of North Saskatoon near Saskatchewan, at approximately 7 a.m. on April the 1st, a rancher and a local veterinarian consult found a mature steer with precise cookie-cutter incision of the ear and tongue, total absence of blood within the carcass and on the surrounding ground, despite major arteries being severed, and the edges were cleared and sealed, heat cauterized, consistent with what we usually see. And there was the rancher noted that the area around the carcass of the animal had a 10-foot circle around it that was flattened in a clockwise pattern. And they reported the Saskatchewan Ministry of Agriculture and independent prairie sleuths investigators. And in spirit activity in Saskatchewan on March 31st, the basement growl. In Rock Glen, Saskatchewan, at a private residence at 3 a.m. on April the 1st, a family of three, a deep guttural growl was heard coming from the basement, vibrating the floorboards of the bedrooms above. All interior doors on the main floor were found standing wide open despite being locked before the family went to bed. The family dog was found cowering in the bathtub and refused to come out until sunrise. And they reported it to the local paranormal Saskatchewan spirit file and the St. Louis Shadow Walker. Residents near St. Louis Corridor, which is where the St. Louis lights are in Saskatchewan. March 31st at 11:15 p.m., two residents, they saw a shadow walker entity, a dense humanoid silhouette, was seen walking across the backyard and seemingly passing through a solid fence. One resident reported hearing their name called from the backyard in a voice that sounded exactly like their partner, who was standing right next to them inside the house. And they reported it the private paranormal investigator log in Saskatchewan. In Alberta, in the last 48 hours, in the Horse Thief Canyon area and the Red Deer River Valley corridor, March 31st at 11:40 p.m., four independent witnesses, two campers, and a local transport driver. A large silent metallic silver cylinder was seen hovering just above the canyon rim. It emitted a blue soft light from its underside before accelerating at a speed that left a visible ion tail in the night sky. The transport driver reported his engine stalling and his radio emitting a high-pitched rhythmic static as the object passed overhead, and they shared it with the Alberta UFO surveyors. And in animal mutilations in Alberta, in the Madden and Crossfield area, on April 1st at 6:15 a.m., one rancher and a local veterinarian tech, a mature cow was found missing its left eye and other reproductive organs, and cuts were described as surgical with no jagged edges, no signs of predatory tearing, total absence of blood on the hide and surrounding soil. The edges of the wounds were dark and smooth and consistent with high heat cauterization. No animal tracks or human tracks were found leading to the site. Local scavengers of coyotes and hawks were notably absent from the area, refusing to approach the carcass, and they reported it to the RCMP, Airdrie Detachment, and the Alberta Ministry of Agriculture. And a residential spirit entity in a private residence in Drumheller, Alberta. And this is ongoing, and it was at midnight at 3:30 a.m. on April 1st, two occupants. The residents were awakened by the sound of coins being dropped in the hallway. When they checked, they found their kitchen chairs stacked 3 high in a pyramid at the center of the room. A shadow walker entity of approximately 6'2" was standing in the master bedroom doorway. It remained for 15 seconds before unfolding into the shadows. One occupant heard the other calling their name from the basement while they were clearly both upstairs. They reported it to the local paranormal investigators. And in Edmonton, in the suburb south of Edmonton, Alberta, 1 a.m. on March 31st, 3 family members heard guttural growls coming from beneath the floorboards. The family reported 3 parallel scratches appearing on the bathroom mirror that was fogged from the shower despite the room being empty. A sudden, overwhelming stench of sulfur and stagnant water filled the laundry room during the event, and they reported it to the Alberta Cryptids File. In Ohio, in the last 48 hours, in Adams County, Ohio, near the Great Serpent Mound, March 31st, at 10 p.m., 5 witnesses, independent witnesses, of course, including a local park ranger and a group of campers, a silent chevron craft with shifting lights underneath its perimeter, the craft hovering over the effigy mound for several minutes before emitting a low frequency hum that vibrated the ground. Local magnetic sensors reported a sharp spike in electronic magnetic activity during a 12-minute sighting. And Adams County Sheriff's Office is who they reported it to, and to the Ohio UFO Researchers Network. And in animal mutilations in Mount Vernon, Ohio, in the Knox County area, April 1st at 6:45 a.m., a farm owner and a neighboring livestock handler found a yearling heifer in an isolated corner of the pasture. Surgical grade incisions of the udder and ear. The cuts were described as micro-smooth. There was no blood around. There was no footprints around of animals. No predators came around. And they reported it to the Knox County Sheriff's Department and to the regional livestock veterinarian. And in residential spirit activity and poltergeist activity, a private residence in Dayton, Ohio, in the Oregon District, on April 1st at 3:15 a.m., 2 adult residents. So the residents were awakened by the sound of heavy crashing in the dining room. They found all their silverware from their buffet drawers scattered in a perfect circle on the rug. And they saw a 6.5-foot entity standing in the hallway, and it appeared to be flickering like a bad television signal before vanishing. One resident heard their own name called from the upstairs bathroom in a voice that sounded like their spouse who was standing in the kitchen at the time. They reported it to the Southern Ohio Paranormal Society. And in Mansfield, Ohio, on March 31st at 1:30 a.m., a single occupant of a home, the sound of 3 distinct knocks on the bedroom door occurred every 15 minutes for over an hour. The occupant reported an overwhelming sense of crushing dread and a cold spot in the room that dropped to 9 Celsius while the furnace was running. A sudden, thick smell of wet ash and sulfur filled the room immediately following the final knocks, and they reported it to the local clergy and the National Haunting File. A thick smell of wet ash and sulfur filled the room for 15 minutes, and they reported it to private spiritual consult with the Yukon High Strangeness investigators. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.